Okay, so this is my first video and I wasn't really sure where to go with it, so I just thought I would talk about some of my favourite books of all time. There are a few of my favourite books of all time that I read last year that I actually want to talk about separately, because I was trying to be a lot more thoughtful about what I read last year and I thought they deserved to be talked about in a bit more detail. So this isn't as reflective of my all-time favourites, because I probably have about 15 all-time favourites, so I've cut out a few, mainly for the ease of filming this as well, because my camera keeps dying. My favourite series of all time is Terry Pratchett's Discworld. I started reading them when I was about 12, when my grandma gave me the first 5 that she got in a boot sale, and I loved them instantly. My friend Bex is actually doing a Discworld-a-thon this year, if you would like to get involved with that. It's the hashtag Discworld-a-thon on Twitter and other places as well. But my favourite Discworld novel is The Last Continent. It wasn't the first one I read, it's probably about the 10th, 11th, 12th one I read, but it's still my favourite. I've reread it quite a few times. I actually bought it new and it's now falling apart. I probably bought it about 11 years ago and read it then. It's a bit of a play on Australian culture, and I didn't get it the first time I read it. I loved it and I thought it was really funny, but now that reading it sort of 11 years on, I've watched Mad Max, I've had some Australian food, I understand some of the cultural references, I'm not having to Google what they mean on my school computer, so it's yeah, it's just it's very funny. It's got my favourite characters in it, it's got the wizards that I love. I'm not actually a fan of fantasy. As a general rule, I don't really like fantasy as a genre. I don't like high fantasy, I don't like young adult fantasy. I understand that it's wonderful, and if you like world building, it's fabulous, and there's a lot of wonderful fantasy out there. It's just not for me, just not my thing. I like the satire side of the Discworld books. So yeah, The Last Continent is my favourite one of those. I would recommend the whole series. I'm rereading this year and I'm trying to be wary of where there might be issues with them, but they still hold a lot of nostalgic value for me. The next one I wanted to talk about was Battle Royale by Koushun Kami. I've seen the films, I like the films, I've tried reading the manga, but I don't really get on well with the graphic novels. I find that I skim read the speech and I miss entire plot points. I'll get to a point and I think, did that character die? They've not appeared, and I'll just go back and think, oh yeah, his face shut off, missed that because there were speech bubbles, and I just can't do it. I've tried, I liked Persepolis, I read that last year, but as a general rule I don't enjoy graphic novels, I find them very hard work. But the novel version of Battle Royale I loved. I got it about 10 years ago. It was a very early translation. It was an American imprint that had appeared in Waterstones. I've been looking for it for ages. The translation that I've got is a little bit clunky, but it's such a good book. It goes into the background of the characters. It talks about why they act the way they do. There's a lot of political aspect to it. It's a very good dystopian, whereas the film is just this bubble of what happens in this stadium. The book goes into a lot more of the political aspect of it and why it's happened and why they're doing this to children, and what these characters have gone through, and it's not just those two integral characters. I also, because I do enjoy a miserable book, I either like really funny books or misery. I like the fact that it has a countdown of how many students are still alive. I just quite enjoyed that as a feature. I remember reading it when I was in Greece once and keep updating my mum on how many characters were still alive, and I think she probably didn't enjoy that. But yeah, I recommend that one. Next one I wanted to talk about was a book that was recommended to me by a friend of mine who I very much respect for her writing and thoughts on feminism and lots of other issues, but she recommended this book broadly to a lot of different people, called The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood. It's a very good book that, to me, when I reviewed it on my WordPress blog, I talked about how it kind of, for me, is what The Lord of the Flies should have been as a classic text. It's not the pretentious schoolboys and boys that have never had no said to them finding out that stuff's going wrong. It's a group of women that wake up in this little cordoned off part of the Australian outback, and they have 2 guards and a nurse. They've got no idea what's going on, and they have to readjust to this new life where they are trapped, and it kind of becomes apparent later on that they are fallen women that have been removed from society for sex scandals or sexual assault reasons. They've become undesirable to society. So it's a very good comment on how we view women in society and how we could end up. It's not quite dystopian, it's on the way, but it's a kind of a logical conclusion to our current media outlook, if you will. Our current outlook towards women and towards women that don't behave the prim and proper way that they are expected to, or have suffered some sort of injustice by men. It's very, very good. It's a lot of feminist commentary. I very much appreciate the feminist commentary in it, and it's just, yeah, there's a lot of internalised misogyny in the characters, and some of them work through it, some of them don't, because I think if they all worked through it, it wouldn't be realistic. But there's a lot of that internalised prejudice that have to work through to come together, and some of them manage it better than others. Some of them really go to an extreme of they are the lone wolf now, and some have to band together. It's just, the way it's done is very good. Another series I love, and this is actually a TV series, I am complete Red Dwarf trash. I love Red Dwarf. It's a series that was on the BBC from the 80s up until the 90s, and it's been redone recently. I like the original cast, and I love Danny John Jules, who plays the cat. As a character, he's on Twitter, he is a treasure, and you should all follow him. He talks a lot about racism and different issues that he's come across in his life. Just fabulous. But the books of Red Dwarf are also very, very good. They were written together, the first couple of books, by Grant Naylor, which is a sort of entity that comprises of 2 people. Then later on they split and they write their separate books, but the first book is my favourite. It talks about how the main character, Lister, goes on pub crawl, gets horrendously drunk, I can relate, and ends up on a different planet and has to get on a spaceship to get back to Earth, but then things go wrong and he ends up 3 million years in the future as the last human being alive, with the creature that evolved from his cat, a hologram, and a robot that was built as a toilet attendant to keep him company. And it's just brilliant. It's really well written. Even as a novelisation of a TV series, they've kind of managed to take the writing tools and the writing skills they have from writing the TV series and embellished it to write this book, and it's just so good. Now, another Australian author I really like is Leanne Moriarty. I've read all of her books. I have a signed copy of one of her books that I got very excited about. But my favourite one of hers is a book called Big Little Lies. Now, all of her books are family dramas that always have a twist. There's a lot of darker elements to it, but they're also kind of black humour as well. But Big Little Lies is my absolute favourite. It's got a fantastic twist, mainly because you have got no idea what's going on for the rest of the book. So the first few pages you find out that someone's died or been killed at an adult's been killed at a school quiz night. About page 400, 350, 400, you find out who's died and who killed them at the same time. So you don't know up until that point. There's all these police interviews and things going on and background characters, and it's building up to this night, and you know someone is going to die, but you just don't know who. And you don't know who's going to kill them, and the person who kills them is not who you would think has killed them when that person died, and it's just very, very good. Really good. There's a lot of, like I say, darker themes in there. There's sort of domestic violence, domestic abuse, and what goes on behind closed doors, and sort of self-esteem and sexual assault. All these things are going on in the undercurrent, but there is also, like I say, a bit of humour, not around those events, but the characters are funny. They're witty. Probably witty is probably a better word. And yeah, it's just, I love the twist. I recommend it to everyone, and I've had people text me like, oh, I wasn't expecting that at all. But yeah, it's very, very well done. I like all of her books, but yeah, that was probably my favourite one of hers. Now, this is one that I read a couple of years ago, Station 11 by Emily St John Mandel. It's another dystopian book. I do love a dystopian book. They're probably my favourite genre. But it's this travelling Shakespearean company / orchestra that's basically cobbled together their instruments and their costumes from things that have been left after the apocalypse. Only 20 years beforehand, flu wipes out most of the world, most of Northern America. It's set in Canada. Most of that continent is gone in terms of humanity. Things are falling apart, and this little travelling band of people go down one of the Great Lakes and back up again, and they perform Shakespeare. And it's kind of a testament to how we keep ourselves human. It's the way it's written. It's got all these different radio interviews and newspaper interviews and flashbacks to what happened before. Characters all kind of interlinked, kind of interposed in a sort of Shakespearean way. It's a bit of a play on Shakespeare, not in a obvious Dickens, the character comes along at the end and this is all alright now, or everything's gone wrong, but they're all very cleverly linked together. There's a sort of pockets of zealous religious people that have cropped up that are taking advantage of the situation as well, or actually believe the things that they're saying. But yeah, it's one of my favourites. I actually have a tattoo of the front cover. I've got the front cover here. I will put it up as well, but I don't know if it's going to focus. But I have this bit on my ankle, which makes people think that my favourite animal is a deer, which is not, which confuses people. But yeah, that's one of my absolute favourites. Is one that has been one of my favourites for years now. I think I read it when I was about 18, 19, at a point where I was a bit sad quite a lot of the time. It's Yes Man by Danny Wallace, and I always felt like, because I was at the time I was at uni doing English Lit and politics, I should probably have a slightly more highbrow favourite, but no. It's a true story, kind of. I imagine it probably didn't happen the way that it's written, but it's basically a man called Danny Wallace. He realises he's been stuck in a rut. He decides one day to say yes to everything that comes his way, and all these weird hijinks happen. Him and his old flatmate, who've now gone their separate ways, him and Dave Gorman, write a lot of show books about these silly bets and ridiculous hijinks that they get up to or have gotten up to. So I think they're probably not quite as true as I would like them to believe, but I do very much enjoy it. But it's just a lovely, uplifting book about what you can do to sort of open up your world a little bit. I tend to recommend it to people that need a bit of a pick me up. It's quite heartwarming. It's silly, it's ridiculous, but it is very heartwarming in terms of how he ends up thinking about himself and about people and about being more open to experiences. It's one that does cheer me up. I think I've just lent it to a friend of mine. Yes. But yeah, very much cheers me up. One of my favourite genres, other than dystopians, is a very niche genre that I think I made up. It is old people getting up to mischief, preferably written by Swedish authors, because there is a surprising amount of those around. My favourite one is The 100-Year-Old Man That Climbed Out the Window and Disappeared. It's written by Jonas Jonasson, and it's exactly what it says. It is a 100-year-old man on his 100th birthday who climbs out of a window in his slippers and just goes on a little adventure. But it links a lot of 20th century European history as well. Actually, no, not even just European history, the whole global history. This character who is kind of, I read it as he is kind of coded as ASD, but it's not explicitly written that way, so it's not. That was just my interpretation of it. He's this explosives expert who just goes through life seeing what happens next, and he ends up just being part of pretty much every big historical event of the 20th century. He meets Mao, I think he meets Castro, maybe? It might not be Castro actually, it's been a little while since I read it. He meets Stalin. He just ends up blowing up things and just moving on with his life, and then at the end he ends up in this old folks home. Then he turns 100, and then his next adventure begins. So it's a lot of flashback and what's going on at the moment. He ends up on the run from the mafia after accidentally stealing a lot of money. He ends up with a dead body in a suitcase, and it is another one that's ridiculous, but it's so good. And I love the character, the main character, the 100-year-old man. He's just this sweet, just, you can imagine just a little old man that just going on with life. He's just a nice character, and it just makes me really happy to read it. So this is my all-time favourite book that actually I did read last year. It was one that I read last year. I read it twice, in fact. I think I first read, I'd heard of it before, and I'd been meaning to read it, but I first read it after I read Everything by Nicola Yoon, and the main character's favourite book is this book. So then I kind of picked it up and thought, this is amazing, because I already owned it, and thought, oh, I'll read that finally. It is Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Keyes, and it is a book that is from the 70s. It's a sci-fi book. It's one of those books where science makes everything go wrong. It's about a man called Charlie who has an IQ of about 70. He ends up being chosen for this experiment where he gets surgery to turn him into a genius, and the first living creature that survives the surgery is Algernon, which is a mouse. And it's all written like his progress report, so it starts off with a lot of spelling mistakes and no punctuation and grammar errors, and as the surgery takes effect and his IQ rises, he ends up writing a lot more technically and scientifically and looking down on other people, and his emotional development doesn't quite go at the same speed, but it makes me cry so much every time. I think the first time I read it, I was on the way back from the London Bookshop Crawl last year, which I'm going on again next month, and again it's organised by my friend Bex, and you should probably check it out if you are anywhere near London. The same hashtag London Bookshop Crawl. And I cried so much on the train that a ticket inspector did not check my ticket. He just looked at me, panicked, and left. And it wasn't that he wasn't checking, he just genuinely looked at me, just went, oh, and walked off. So I could have got away with that. I did have a ticket, but I was just weeping, like as if someone had died level of weeping. And I'd cry as much the next time I read it. It's the last like 5 pages that gets me, and it's the missing, there's apostrophe missing in the writing, and that is a thing that that's the point where I get to that point and I just crack. So yeah, it is my all-time favourite book. I can't really explain why it makes me cry without giving away the ending. The blurb kind of gives away the ending as well, but it gets me, really does get me. If I need to cry, I will read the last chapter. But it's a very old, again, it's a old school sci-fi, I would say. Very, very old school sci-fi from the 70s. But yeah, all-time favourite, and I imagine one day it will be surpassed, but I can't see it happening. I think it will always be one of those ones that will make me weep. I do like to ramble a bit. I'm planning on taking part in the Diversathon. I've already got my TBR ready, but I didn't want my first video to be about that, because that kind of feels like I'm imposing, like, oh, look at this magical first video of mine, that I'm gonna take the glory of this thing that I've not made up. So I thought I might talk about that next week when it's actually taking part. So yeah, this was me having a ramble, and I hope that I could probably edit this, because otherwise there's going to be a lot of this where I keep leaning forward, but I have no idea what I'm doing, so never mind. Anyway, bye.